Welcome back to Money Talks. I'm Matthew Moore in Istanbul. Still ahead on the programme. Some would say pointless, others priceless. But the bidding goes on regardless. How traditional auction houses are adapting to the modern world. Now, Volkswagen is facing angry shareholders who have plenty of unanswered questions about its emissions scandal. Now, VW's problem started in September when it admitted to cheating US emissions tests. Now, the meeting in Hanover in Germany comes a day after German prosecutors launched a probe into the company's former CEO, Martin Winterkorn. Now, shareholders have also taken legal action against VW relating to claims from institutional funds that could run into billions of dollars. Well, the embattled carmaker has so far set aside $18.3 billion for compensating car owners who thought they were buying eco-friendly cars. Now, editor-at-large Craig Copetas went to Miami to meet one customer VW is trying very hard to keep happy.
Diesel engine cars are rare in America. Unlike in Europe, where more than half of all vehicles are diesels, in the US they account for about 0.5% of all cars on the road. Which is why when Green Car Journal crowned the 2009 Volkswagen Jetta TDI as its Green Car of the Year, Americans chose them specifically for a reason that turned out to be a lie.
Real estate investor John Leonardo has driven them all. Bentleys, Audis, luxury SUVs. Then in 2010, he decided to help save the planet and go green. The car he bought? A Volkswagen turbo diesel. Oh dear.
I'm driving along one day and all of a sudden the light appears on my dashboard, the little shape of a small engine, and of course I was curious and I opened up a manual and it said, this is an emissions problem, you need to go to your dealer, and if it's flashing you need to go immediately. Well, it wasn't flashing, so I continued to drive the car for a few weeks. The next thing you know, I see the news about this big emissions scandal with Volkswagen, and I said to myself, my God, no wonder the little light went on.
It turned out that his Jetta wasn't really green at all. Just like at least 58,000 so-called clean diesel models sold by Volkswagen in the US and over 10 million more worldwide.
Well, the first thing they did was, I guess, to try to make feel people that are better is send us a letter, and it said, and in that letter we had a $500 certificate to get service at any Volkswagen dealer in the US and a $500 Visa card just as a way to kind of appease our disappointment with the car. Later on, I was contacted by various law firms that were doing class action lawsuits, particularly in the state of California, and joined that class action lawsuit. And since then, more news continues to come out about settlements and so on.
The U.S. Department of Justice and the Environmental Protection Agency filed a civil suit that could see Volkswagen coughing up $45 billion in fines. On top of that, more than 500 class actions have been filed by smog-smelling lawyers across the U.S. on behalf of Volkswagen diesel car owners like John Leonardo. Volkswagen flogged these cars' bogus eco-friendly credentials for years.
Diesel in Latin means dirty. I'll prove it to you. You're gonna ruin your scarf. Oh, look what she's doing. See how clean it is?
On TV and in print, and even at the Super Bowl, the German car maker was committing consumer fraud.
John, how did the Volkswagen salesman prove to you that this diesel vehicle was actually green?
He took out a rag, put it up to the exhaust pipe and said, look, this is clean diesel, not your father's diesel.
Volkswagen has set aside about $7.3 billion to make its cars comply with emissions rules in the U.S. But that doesn't begin to take into account the restitution, compensation, attorney's fees, and fines that Volkswagen will eventually have to fork out. Craig Copetas, TRT World, Miami.
Well, earlier we spoke to the journalist Edward Taylor, who has been attending the AGM in Hanover. He said there had been at least some contrition from VW's management.
Volkswagen's chief executive and supervisory board chairman both apologized to shareholders for the Dieselgate scandal and pledged to do a better job and be more transparent going forward. Now, the shareholders are waiting for details about how the new company will look and whether such a scandal will be repeated going forward.
Okay, time to look at some of the biggest stories happening in the business world now over the next 24 hours. Well, in case you missed it, the big day has come. British citizens will vote on whether they want to be part of the EU. Members of the Organization of American States will hold an extraordinary session in Washington to try to find a solution to the Venezuelan crisis. Many are worried the country is becoming a failed state. Venezuelans are suffering from severe food shortages and an inflation rise of 720% this year alone. And is the once dominant Canadian smartphone pioneer BlackBerry about to hang up on its hardware business? Investors and analysts are watching closely as the company reports its first quarter results. BlackBerry's mobile devices have been struggling to compete with Apple and Samsung smartphones in the past few years. Now, which city in the world is the most expensive to live in if you are an expat? The consultancy firm Mercer says it has the answer. It's compared the cost of more than 200 items across the world, which include housing, food and entertainment. And here's their top 5. In at 5 then is Tokyo, climbing 6 places from last year. It's one of 3 Asian cities to make the top 5 this year. Singapore stays in 4th for a second year running. The most expensive place for an expat in Europe turns out to be Zurich. Last year's champion has been bumped into 2nd place. It's Africa's most expensive hideout for expats, Angola's capital, Luanda. And last year's bridesmaid is this year's bride. Hong Kong tops the list, so be ready to crack open the piggy bank if you live there. Pamela Ambler is there for us.
Hong Kong just became the world's most expensive city to live in for expats. That's according to Mercer's cost of living survey. Now, I want to clarify that the purpose of this study is designed to help multinationals determine compensation strategies for their employees on international assignments. But looking at their numbers and comparing that to my own spending, I see some discrepancies. So take a morning coffee, for example. Mercer is saying it would cost $7.70 US, whereas in New York, it would be more around $2.30. New York City is used here as a base for all comparisons. And in my experience of living in both places, I generally spend around $5 US for my cup of joe here and closer to $3.50 in the US. As for accommodation, they quoted $6,800 a month for a 2-bedroom unfurnished apartment with the stipulation of what they refer to as international standards in an appropriate neighborhood. Their cost for New York is closer to $5,000 a month. I would agree that for me, I certainly pay more per square footage here than in New York, but the flats are generally much smaller here. And Mercer is citing factors including currency fluctuation, cost inflation, and instability in housing prices that contribute to the change in the city's rankings.
First world problems. A Pablo Picasso cubist portrait titled The Femme Assise has sold by Sotheby's and fetched $63.5 million. Now, although the price easily surpassed the estimate of $43 million, the evening sale of Impressionist and modern art represents a 42% decline from the same event last year. Now, together with a Modigliani painting, the two works accounted for 80% of the night's tally of art sold. Well, as the global appetite for art has slowed this year, Sotheby's is in the middle of a bitter fight with its largest competitor, Christie's. Now, André-Pierre Duplessis got an inside look into how Christie's is trying to stay ahead of the pack.
To some people, this may be nothing more than some colors on a canvas. To others, number 17 is a multi-million-dollar investment.
What's great about paintings, is that each one is unique. And so this is not gold. Gold is at 500 or 1,000 or whatever it may be. This is Rothko, so that's a starting point. But then there's going to be a million variants as to why one Rothko is better than the other.
Calculating the value of paintings like this one, completed in 1957, is not a precise art, even at Christie's. This abstract by expressionist Mark Rothko sold for $32.5 million, towards the bottom end of the market for a Rothko, which can fetch as much as $50 million.
You're going to want to assign an estimate which is reflective of the quality of the painting, but still attractive enough to entice people into the bidding process. So if they feel that this is a $50 or $60 million picture or a $70 million picture, and the estimate is 30 to 50, they go, that might just be a bargain.
$160 million, Brett, it's yours, so.
But not wanting to give away too many bargains, art buyers attend sale nights like these, where auctioneers play hopeful bidders off against each other.
Just like any other company, Christie's has had to adjust to keep bringing in business. Thanks to years of trust as the bastion of the auction world, it has been able to convince buyers to bid from home.
The natural progression of that is to move online. It's the easiest way to reach the most people in the world. And so Christie's has been really at the forefront for a business which is quite old and often viewed as conservative.
In 2007, Christie's was the first auction house to provide worldwide online access to its sale rooms. In 2011, the company added its own bidding system for exclusively online auctions. And last year, 20% of the company's total buyer base found their way to Christie's through digital means. Online sales were estimated to bring in just over $1 billion for the company. But Christie's hasn't revealed how much it's spent to develop these technology solutions. The initiative to attract younger, tech-savvy and global clients is one of many digital strategies being explored by major auction houses. Innovation is regarded by most of them as an opportunity for expansion, rather than something that threatens traditional auctioneering. Andre Pierre du Plessis, TRT World, New York.
Now, to those of you living in the United Kingdom, we look forward to your decision. But for now, that is all from us at Money Talks. Thanks for watching.